إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا إنه من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. Dear brothers and sisters, tonight I want to just continue talking about the destruction of the second temple, or the destruction of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And before coming to that point, actually, there are two main events we want to clarify, because they are very important, and at the same time, they are going to help us in understanding the context of destruction for the people who, when they get away from their religion, from the teachings of Allah. And this is what happened with the Jews at that time, and we as Muslims should learn too from them. So we reached the first year AD or BC with the birth of Isa alayhi salam. And we said one of the major issues here that we remember that there were three prophets sent to the Jewish people at the same time. The first is Zachariah alayhi salam, or Zachariah. So Zachariah alayhi salam is the prophet, and we all know that. But from my readings, it seems that the Jews did not consider Zachariah as a prophet. They were looking at him as a religious leader. He was the high priest in the council of the rabbis that used to have that religious leadership in Jerusalem, as we said and declared before. So this is first thing, or the first thing we want to talk about when we come to this point. Then we all know the story when Zachariah alayhi salam asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him a child. رَبِّ هَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ وَلِيًّا يَرِثُنِي وَيَرِثُ مِنْ آلِ يَعْقُوبَ وَجَعَلْهُ رَبِّ رَضِيًّا. That was the dua of Zachariah alayhi salam. He was looking for a son to inherit him, and to inherit or have the legacy of the people of Jacob, of Yaqub alayhi salam. So it is important to understand Zachariah alayhi salam was seeking the inheritance of religious affairs, not of money, of properties. Because in the verse before that, he said to Allah, وَإِنِّي خِفْتُ الْمَوَالِيَ مِنْ وَرَائِي. Oh Allah, I am afraid about my people, my relatives, my family after my death. So that was the reason for making that dua. فَهَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ وَلِيًّا. So Allah grant me a successor from my family, and he's going to inherit these religious affairs and leadership in his community at that time. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered his dua and granted him who? Yahya alayhi salam. Yahya is John, or John the Baptist. So Allah answered his dua, and he granted him his son Yahya alayhi salam. لَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُ مِنْ قَبْلُ سَمِيًّا. Allah described that boy, and he gave him the good news and the name of the boy and the description of the boy. He said, we grant you a son, his name is gonna be Yahya, John. And this name has never been given to anyone before Yahya alayhi salam. The main point here, we wanna understand what happened to Yahya alayhi salam. They killed Yahya alayhi salam. At that time, there was a king who was taking the leadership of that territories of Jerusalem, Galilee, and the area, or especially Galilee. Yeah, he was in Galilee, I'm sorry, not Jerusalem. And he was the governor at that time. His name is very famous, Herod the king. This man, all of a sudden, wanted to marry his brother's ex-wife. And this was unlawful. Why it was unlawful? They added that this wife, his half-brother's wife or ex-wife, he loved her, and he wanted to divorce. Herod loved her and wanted to divorce his wife and marry this lady, Herodias. Her name is Herodias, as it was mentioned in the history and in the Bible. So, what's the problem? The problem is this lady was actually Herod's niece, and he wanted to marry her. So, who came against him? Who kept criticizing him, rejecting and refusing this to happen, was Yahya alayhi salam. John the Baptist said, it can never happen. This is not allowed. And he protested against that, against him. And it is said, historically, biblically, and Islamically, we know that. The daughter of this lady came one night. They say it was the birthday night celebration for Herod, and she began dancing and seducing him. And he was drunk, and she asked him that she wanted him to kill Zachariah, Yahya alayhi salam, and she wanted him to give her his head, Yahya's head, on a platter as a gift for her. And that was a conspiracy between the daughter and the mom. This is how Herod killed, or why Herod killed Yahya alayhi salam. Of course, the Jews know that. But Yahya alayhi salam, to the Jews, he was a prophet. They loved him so much. And they appreciated him. And one of the very Jewish or ancient Jewish historians, his name is Josephus, is very famous in history, especially about that time. Most of the history narrated about that period of time is actually coming from Josephus. Josephus said, no, it was not the point of marriage. He was afraid of John because the Jewish people loved him so much, and he was afraid he is going to get the Jewish people to rebel against him and his ruling, or against the Romans. So he killed him. Anyway, the second issue before we come to the point of discussion tonight is Jesus alayhi salam was born. So he was almost 3 months. He was born 3 months after Yahya alayhi salam. And he was almost his aunt. They were Yahya's Mary, and Yahya's mom was almost sisters. So what happened now? After Jesus alayhi salam came to the Jews, they didn't like him. The council of the rabbi, it was called Sanhedrin. This is the council of the rabbi that ruled in Jerusalem at that time, especially religiously. They didn't like, and you know the story of Mary, I don't want to come to that point, please, but they came also to make the conspiracy against Jesus, peace be upon him, to be what? To be killed. Some people may tell you, and be careful about that, and they know the history very well. Even the Bible says that. Even if you want to watch, there is a movie called Jesus of Nazareth. Yeah, there is a movie done by the Christians called Jesus of Nazareth. You can watch that. The ones who put him to be sentenced to death were the Sanhedrin, or the council of the rabbi, by the conspiracy led by, or the conspiracy was led by the high priest of that council. But he cannot execute that decision. So executed it the Romans, because they were the governors of the place. We said before, the Jewish people in Jerusalem has a kind of religious autonomy, not political autonomy, not in the political affairs. So the one who executes the decision has to be the governor of the city, who was a Roman governor. So some people say, no, the Romans said, no. It was the Jewish council who made that with the conspiracy, with the leadership of the high priest. So, and they decided to put him into crucifixion. And we know the story, he was not crucified to us, as Allah said, is that right? So, these are two main events happened. What we can say about John's death was almost at the year 28th or 29th 28th or 29th, between 28th and 29th, according to historians. And the crucifixion or the trial to crucify Jesus alayhi salam was 32 AD or B or AC. That means when Jesus alayhi salam had how many years? 32, because this is the beginning of the calendar, what we are talking about. So these two events happened. In the year 64, after this great corruption, though they were very strong in Jerusalem, they had the second temple established, and that was the very sanctuary, sacred place to the Jewish people. What happened? They rebelled, and they started a revolt against the Romans. There was a commander, a Roman army commander called Vespasian. He besieged them, and he entered Galilee, Al-Galil, and he went to besiege Jerusalem. It was it has a lot of force and walls around that city. But what happened actually, Nero, the emperor of the Roman Empire, passed away at that time. So there was a kind of fight, chaos amongst the leaders, the people in Rome, who is going to be the king, who is going to take the position of Nero. Vespasian himself, the commander in the army we were talking about, left Jerusalem at that time to stop the chaos happening in Rome, and he became the emperor. So he sent his son. In the year 70, his son is Titus. Titus, the son of Vespasian. He sent his son with 60,000 soldiers besieging the city of Jerusalem. And this is the second destruction. They entered the city of Jerusalem. They destroyed the temple. They burned the entire city. Then they slaughtered every Jew person they could find. It is said that they took 10,000 Jews with them to Rome to be enslaved and to be sold in the slavery market in Rome. It is said that 30,000 Jews in one of the cities called Masada or Jabal Mas'ada or Mas'ada, I don't know how to say it in Arabic, I'm sorry, but they even committed a suicide rather than being taken in captivity to the Romans. 10,000 and tens of thousands of Jews were killed, massacred inside Jerusalem. It is said 1.1 million Jewish people were slaughtered, killed, and enslaved at that time in the year 70 AD or B or AC. So by this time, what I wanted to say today is the mount or the Temple Mount or the second temple was completely destroyed. And from now until Al-Fath al-Islami, inshallah, we are going to see that there is no existence to the Jews in Jerusalem, in Palestine, in any part of Palestine. The people who were almost still alive were taken as captives in Rome. There is no one, there is no Jerusalem. There was no temple anymore. And this is the story of the destruction of the second temple or the temple of Jerusalem. Inshallah, next sessions we are going to continue. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to support our brothers and sisters in Palestine. اللهم انصرهم على أعدائهم بنصرك يا عزيز يا حكيم. اللهم مكن لهم في الأرض يا أكرم الأكرمين. اللهم احقن دماءهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم احقن دماءهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم ثبت أقدامهم واربط على قلوبهم وزلزل الأرض من تحت أقدام أعدائهم. اللهم يا رب العالمين كلهم يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم يا رب العالمين يا أكرم الأكرمين انكر لهم وأنت خير الماكرين. اللهم إنا نجعلك في نحور أعدائهم ونعوذ بك من شرورهم. اللهم أمن إخواننا في فلسطين من خوف يا رب العالمين. اللهم أطعم جائعهم واكس عاريهم وداوي جريحهم إنك أنت الكريم. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وجزاكم الله خيرا.